Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. I'm your host, Buford Terrell, and tonight I'm here by myself. Clayton Jones is out in Albuquerque attending the Drug Policy Forum Alliance's big conference out there. And we hope at our next show to have reports and videos from him and Dean Becker about that conference. I think probably to start tonight, we should mention that it is Veterans Day and give our remembrance to those that have defended our country all through our history. And I would hope at least that those currently representing us in Iraq and Afghanistan survive to become very old veterans and not become additional casualties. But in thinking about our veterans, there are some groups of them especially that I think we need to remember. Going back to the Civil War, there are all of those veterans who, after the war, suffered from the so-called old soldier disease or morphism, soldiers that became addicts because of the unskillful use of opium by the War Department during the war and in treatment of the wounded after that. And since Veterans Day was originally Armistice Day, as far as the First World War is concerned, I think we should remember our comrades, the British veterans of the European trenches, who, as they went to France at the beginning of that war, received packages prepared by Harrods department store and sent to them by their parents and families for their comfort, and contained, among many other things, cocaine and morphine, at least until the British government got worried and passed their Defense of the Realm Act and stopped it. We need to include all of those millions of dog faces, GIs, and grunts who from the 1940s up through the Gulf War of 1991 consumed millions and millions of amphetamines, force-fed them by the military to keep them awake and alert during long, cold, bitter nights, to those grunts in Vietnam who found the heroin of Southeast Asia relieve some of the terrors and tediums of war, and to those currently in Central Asia who are also finding Afghanistan heroin serves the same purpose. And also the happy side for those veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, as MDMA is going through stage 3 clinical trials for treatment of this disorder. We have a phone call already. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I've been wondering about these Kester's pills I've been taking. They're herbal supplements.
Okay.
I've been wondering why this isn't, regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. I'm looking at the bottle right now.
Yeah.
It's been giving me severe pain, too. There's something called belladonna in it. And
okay.
Nux vomica.
Nux vomica?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been taking these for intestinal pain, and it's been causing me, I think, more pain.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of an answer. I'm not a doctor, so I can't really tell you whether you should or should be taking them, but your question was, why aren't these dietary supplements regulated by the FDA? The answer is that in the early 1990s, the FDA tried to regulate them. The herbal supplement industry is so big that they raised a storm in Congress. Congress passed a law in 1995, and the FDA cannot touch dietary supplements, vitamin pills, herbal cures until after they have been marketed, and then only if they are using misleading health claims. I'll finish this after we talk to the other caller. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey there, Sailor. My name is Mike, and I just want to let you know I'm a fan of your show.
Well, thank you.
And Mr. Man with the beard, I just want to put you on my lap and just give you a nice little spank.
Okay, thank you.
I would also like to take you home and just go.
Thank
and then,
you, sir.
Slap it.
Okay, thank you, caller. Anyway, this group, the law passed, allows herbal supplements and dietary supplements to be marketed as long as no health claims are made. If they make health claims, the FDA can pull them off the market for being misleading. Now, belladonna, you mentioned, is actually pretty much a deadly poison. It's what used to be used by doctors to dilate your eyes for examination. It's used as a heart medicine in very small doses. Nux vomica is an old herbal remedy, been around for centuries. But that same law set up a new health institute to examine claims, and they found out some interesting things. None of the dietary supplements they have tested have been shown to be medically effective at all, and very, very, very many of the supplements they've tested, including some from the biggest, most reputable brands, have been totally erratic in content, and what they contained almost never matched what their labels said. So my own personal feeling is stay away from the things. If it's bad enough you need medicine, you probably need to talk to a doctor about it. Now, I will say that we have gotten a couple of emails since the last show, and if you'll notice, we have an email address up on screen, especially for those of you that may be watching over YouTube or that watch it delayed at a later time. It lets you get in touch with us. A couple of them that I got this week were pretty interesting. One of them, and I think I'll read the whole letter here. I smoke on the weekends and sometimes during the week. My biggest fear is where it comes from and what chemicals are put in it if not grown correctly. This is especially true with what comes from the southern border. Terrorists could very easily buy out growers to taint our smoke and make people ill. This seemed overlooked. The hydro is all American, made where less is really more. What say you? And then this I like. P.S. I've used cannabis for years, competed in a hard science BS degree in some grad school with a GPA over 3.4, and 28 hours of grad school with a 4.0, smoking most of the time. I also have a full-time job. I spent 12 years in the Marines and have a good family life. I've never been in any trouble with the law. Semper Fi, Mark. Congratulations. You know, Mark, the only time I have ever heard of the crops being adulterated were when Nixon sprayed paraquat on the marijuana in Mexico. I don't really think we're terrorist targets. Hello, you're on the air. Hello. Please turn your television down.
How are you today?
Just fine. How are you?
Great. I just wanted to tell you, congratulations on going solo today. I know the other guy's not there, but you could have called me. I could have helped the co-host. I have lots of fun things to talk about.
Well, good. We'll put you down for next time, maybe. Why don't you talk to Steve, and we'll sure schedule you on the show.
Okay, because I've always been interested. I watch your show every time it's on, and since the holidays are coming up, I can dress up like a Christmas elf.
Okay.
Questions, you can throw it to me like a girl's point of view.
That sounds like a wonderful idea to me.
Okay, so I have questions about drugs.
Okay.
All right, so I've been having really bad back pain, and I had some 2-year-old hydrocodone that, I had gotten for something else a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, is it bad to self-medicate, you think?
Well, please don't put me in the position of trying to practice medicine here.
Well, that's true.
I'm not trained in it.
You seem to know a lot about your drugs, and so if I just have questions, I thought maybe I'd call your show.
Well, speaking from general knowledge and not anything, probably hydrocodone 2 years old, unless it's gotten very, very hot or something, is probably still potent.
Okay.
Now, whether you want to use that for a backache without talking to your doctor, that's a different question. And
right. Okay, so it would probably be a bad idea to try and make sure it was strong by drinking like a glass of wine or having a glass of tequila.
Well, generally speaking, mixing an opioid with alcohol is a very bad idea.
I don't know opioids. I don't know what that is. I don't
Okay, that's anything. That's hydrocodone. Hydrocodone is a derivative of opium.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Am I going to go to jail for using this?
Well, if you've got it under a prescription, it's legal for you to have it.
All right. God, you worried me there.
But there are probably 30 different opioids of one kind or another, from the forbidden heroin all the way down through codeine cough syrup that you can buy without a prescription sometimes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. By the way, I think your show's pretty fancy because I see you got a 2-camera angle going there. That's pretty fancy for public access television.
Actually, we've got 3 cameras and a couple of really, really, really good producers and cameramen that help us do this. So.
Oh my God! I want to come to your show, Mr. Buford. Do you have live studio audience questions ever? I could be that person.
Well, we sure can. Probably find a use for you. Why don't I hang up now?
No, I don't want to hang up. I like talking to you. It's cool to be on television and talking to my biggest idol of drugs, crime, and politics.
Okay. Well, I was going to suggest that you might want to talk to Steve and set up a time
Dude, is he single?
What?
No, Christmas coming up. I need a New Year's Eve date.
Well, I'm single, but I think my girlfriend might object to my getting a different date on New Year's Eve.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go try and see how much stronger I can make my drugs, and I'll let you know. Do you want me to call you back and let you know once it kicks in?
Well, use your discretion on that. But if you do...
No, but I think it'd be really funny because, see, my back was hurting so bad that I took it, but I haven't taken anything else to drink yet.
Okay.
How about I do an experiment for you since you're live on television? I will drink a drink. I'll call you like in 10 minutes.
Well, as I say, I don't
I'll drink another drink, and I'll call you back.
I wouldn't recommend taking a drink with the hydrocodone in you.
Oh, okay.
The alcohol and the hydrocodone actually boost each other up and make both of them stronger.
My goodness, that sounds fun, but also dangerous.
Okay, thank you for calling.
Thank you, Mr. Buford. I love you.
Okay. Back to Mike's question. I don't think that terrorist poisoning is a real concern. Now, it's not really the right kind of target for there to be any danger. Now, is the weed on the street sometimes adulterated? Yes. Sometimes it's mixed with all sorts of other things or soaked in other chemicals sometimes. But it's like a lot of other illegal products. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Santa Claus, you are giving me a raging.
Okay, and the other question that I got gets us into a different area, and it's a little more interesting. Nick B. wants to know, why does the city of Houston allow prostitution which uses human trafficking but cracks down on minor drug possession? First, I'm not really sure they do. Now, to look in the way I've been classifying things lately, prostitution laws and drug prohibition laws are exactly the same kind of prohibition. They try to impose the law in the middle of a thriving working market, and it never works. And interestingly, they're about the same age. The United States is one of the few places with laws against prostitution, and the earliest of them date from about 1870, and the most recent new ones are before 1930. Now, Some places the police have tried to enforce it. It doesn't work any more than they have been able to enforce the drug laws. They don't accept when someone raises hell. Most of the times you see prostitution laws enforced are when there are women working in the streets and it draws attention from the surrounding neighborhood who complain, or when someone in city government for political purposes starts a morality campaign, then you see enforcement against it. Sometimes there's, today you'll occasionally see larger raids that are aimed at trafficking in humans as opposed to prostitution. One reason, one of the side effects of any kind of prohibition law is that it leads to official corruption. A recent study of street prostitutes in Chicago found that 3% of their tricks were freebies to Chicago policemen in return for being let alone to carry out their job. Now, 3% of gross receipts is a pretty stiff tax to pay. Drug dealers don't have that option. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I had a question about your terrorism theory.
Okay.
Are you talking about in Houston, or are you talking all over the country?
The question was, do we in Houston particularly have anything to fear about someone poisoning the marijuana crops in Mexico?
I've heard of some sleeper cells in Houston. Ryan Chase, I've heard that he got a huge sleeper cell here. And I didn't know if you've heard about him at all, because Ryan Chase is a big douchebag, and he totally...
Thank you. I tend to discount almost all conspiracy theories that I hear. And they're telling me it's time for the first break. I enjoy talking to you all on the phone, so when we come back, we'll see what else comes up.
I remember just going in, taking a small area of my community and for all practical purposes, cordoning it off, completely cleaning it up, using some pretty sophisticated techniques, trampling all over the edges of the Constitution to do so. But I mean, really cleaning it up and getting all of the dope dealers out of there. And to my dismay, 90 days later, I had a Haitian group to move in from downstate. I had the Miami boys to move in from Jacksonville, and they were shooting machine guns and beating people mercilessly, and I wanted my old dope dealers back.
First of all, they can't see me through like the filter of like I am a kid. You know, they have to be able to relate to me as a person, you know, as an equal, somebody that I feel like is close enough to me that would not judge me. It'd have to be somebody that, you know, that I'm comfortable with. It's definitely a matter of being able to just see them as like a friend, you know, to relate to them.
Good evening. You're watching Drugs, Crime, and Politics on Houston Media Source.
Okay, we're back. Glad to have you with us tonight. I'm taking it solo while my colleagues are in Albuquerque. I think probably the big news of the week, but let's take a phone call first. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, are you two lovers?
The big news of the week is that the AMA's Policy Council, in their meeting this last week, for the first time endorsed research into cannabis, acknowledged that it had medicinal value, but called for primarily the development of single chemical drugs from it. Most people don't realize that this is the fourth time that the AMA has spoken on the issue. In the mid-90s, after the Institute of Medicine report affirming that cannabis did have medical value and that it needed investigation, but that certain patients, probably those terminals, should be allowed to smoke the drug. Even right now, shortly after that, the AMA came out with a brief policy statement saying that they didn't recognize any medical value. So this has been a complete turnaround from that. In the late 50s, the AMA and the American Bar Association appointed a joint committee to study and report on drug issues. And they reported particularly looking at heroin, that therapy and maintenance should be used instead of criminal law, and also affirmed what the LaGuardia Commission had found out about marijuana, that basically it caused no damage and that it should not be prohibited by law. And in 1937, at the time the original marijuana law was passed, the AMA representative testified to the Congressional Committee that the AMA saw no reason to regulate marijuana, that it caused no hazard or danger. And in a very prescient statement, I just had occasion to go back and look at this testimony, their representative said that he feared that passing that law, the marijuana law, would prohibit research into very promising health uses for cannabis in the future. And it's since that time that all we have learned about its use as an adjunct to cancer therapy, with AIDS wasting, with glaucoma, with spastic disease and pain. All of those things have been developed since then. Exactly the kind of research that the AMA warned the government they should not cut off back in 1937. So the AMA's change of position on this is really a rather strong and a hopeful look, especially when it's coupled with last year's position paper by the American College of Physicians, which is the largest group of professional practicing doctors. It's all of the doctors in internal medicine. They came out with a very, very strong position paper advocating further research and into medical use, and recognizing that it did have therapeutic benefit. So I see this AMA statement as a very, very helpful, strong move forward. So I would like to hear from some of the rest of you if you want to call in. I've been watching and noticing reactions across the country since the Justice Department came out with its memorandum of instructions to U.S. attorneys about respecting state medical marijuana laws this month. And the amazing thing about it has been the almost total lack of negative reactions in the press all across the country. Almost all of the editorial comments, almost all of the letters to the editor have been either strongly in favor of the Attorney General's decision not to prosecute, or hopeful but watchfully waiting. Almost no one has been opposed to it or seen it as a step backward. We have another caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was just wondering about with marijuana with the legalization. If, like in California, there, if we're ever going to do that here in Texas.
Okay.
Because do we vote? Are we ever going to vote on this?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, actually, he asked two questions. What's going to happen in Texas, and will we ever vote on it? The second one is pretty easy to answer. Texas law does not have any provision for referendum or initiative voting. So there's no way that we can go to the public and with a statewide vote change the law. We have to do it through the legislature. Now, there's been a medical marijuana bill of one kind or another in most of the recent sessions of the legislature. Unfortunately, the rules of the legislature have been such that, for instance, one sole committee chairwoman acting her own behalf was able to block a committee from ever even hearing debate on it. So it's up to you to pressure your legislature to get things to happen. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Buford. Do you call you Bu? I kind of like Bu.
I guess I could just turn the broadcast over to him for the rest of the night, but it might embarrass some of you. The problem in Texas, and this is a problem that I don't know, I doubt that we're going to change. We have been working with legislative district structures that were set up a long time ago, and they have given rural conservative districts a much stronger vote in state politics than their population amounts to. The large urban areas like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, El Paso are proportionately very weak in Austin compared to the number of people they have. Federal law requires us to redistrict every 10 years after the new federal census. However, if redistricting goes like it is historically done, it will be used to avoid letting the votes go to where the population is and try to maintain the older balance of power. And to some extent, and I'm not trying to paint this particularly as a good guy, bad guy, or us and them kind of thing, but historically, the rural areas in this state, at least, have been much more conservative, much less liberal on social issues than the urban areas have been. And as long as our districting is set up so that they have a disproportionate amount of the legislative power, it's going to be hard to get substantial changes on these issues through the legislature. Now, the other side to that is that as we've been looking at the reactions to the Department of Justice memo, what we're finding is that activity is picking up in many other state legislatures. There are probably as many as 10 or a dozen active state bills into consideration around the country at this point in time. If this nationwide surge builds into some kind of tidal wave, I suspect that we're going to see changes occur on the federal level, which will then reflect back down to Texas. And it may be that those in Austin will listen to what's going on in other states, and that will be enough to bring some change. It's time to take another break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hello, I'm Nadia Swaby with the Marijuana Policy Project. Today's question comes to us from our YouTube subscriber, Ray Sputin. He asks about the truth behind some strange numbers the White House Office on National Drug Control Policy and others have put out lately. According to the ODCP's Marijuana and Teens fact sheet, each year more teens enter treatment with a primary diagnosis of marijuana dependence than for all other illicit drugs combined. Sounds scary, right? Prohibitionists regularly claim that one of marijuana's main dangers is that it's addictive. But if you've seen our episode number 3, you know that's stretching the truth. The federal government's own statistics show that the majority of people in treatment for marijuana abuse or dependence did not seek treatment. They were forced into it because they were arrested. Imagine you're given 2 choices, rehab or prison. Which one would you take? In the government's eyes, all marijuana use is abuse, plain and simple. According to the treatment episode data set highlights, only 15% of those in marijuana treatment sought treatment voluntarily. Also, according to the TEDS data, over 1/3 of those in treatment for marijuana abuse or dependence did not use marijuana at all in the 1 month prior to admission, and more than half used it 3 times or less. These are addicts. Would you call someone who had 3 beers in a month an alcoholic? The truth is, we arrest people for smoking marijuana, force them into treatment that most of them don't need, then use those treatment admissions as proof that marijuana is addictive. Sounds pretty Orwellian to me. This has been Marijuana 2-Minute Truths. Don't forget to email us your questions. Bye.
That sounds legitimate to me, but I can't. I can't. We're back again. And as I say right now, nationwide at least, politics on medical marijuana are really, really up in the air all across the country. It may be that the Department of Justice's decision to hold off on prosecuting people legitimately obeying state medical marijuana laws really is a signal that they feel like they have lost the moral and political high ground and that there's nothing to be gained by trying to prosecute. I do know that the more recent nationwide surveys show that nationwide over 70% of the people are in favor of allowing medical use of marijuana. The other side of the issue, and I'm not really sure exactly how this is going to work out. There's been, for a year now, a fairly constant drumbeat in slick magazines, most recently in Fortune, and since then in, I believe it was Business Week and this week's Time magazine, suggesting that medical marijuana, as it's set up in California, is in fact a fig leaf legalization. At least 2 of the publications have pointed out that Los Angeles has more medical marijuana dispensaries than it has Starbucks or McDonald's, either one. Right now, doctors in California are charging about, I think it's $150 for a consultation to determine whether or not to recommend medical marijuana. And apparently it's very, very hard to flunk one of those consultations. I have a caller. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you? First of all, I'd like to say that I do enjoy your show, and I've been watching for quite some time, and this is my first time to call in, so thank you for everything that you do. I do believe that you do provide a public
Thank you.
And I have a question for you regarding the terrorism that exists in Mexico and the drug trafficking that obviously is a problem down there, specifically because I just recently was married, and I went down there for my honeymoon. And honestly, I was told so many times to not go to Mexico for the honeymoon because everybody seemed to have this fear that something terrible was to happen.
Okay.
And I have no idea. I didn't see anything. So could you tell me your theory regarding this? Because I also think I don't think there's a drug trafficking issue in Mexico. I think there's a timeshare issue in Mexico.
Okay. Now, can I ask you what part of Mexico you went to?
Yes, sir. I went to Cabo San Lucas.
Okay. That explains part of it. Let me talk about this a little. The violence in Mexico, first, of course, it's much more complicated than any of us think. They've never really completely settled the revolution of 1910. Low-level violence has tended to be endemic. But starting in the 1980s, really, when drug trafficking through Mexico expanded, several Mexican gangs in Sinaloa and all along the U.S.-Mexican border got involved in trafficking both Colombian cocaine and Mexican-grown marijuana. And let's take a call and come back and talk more. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I just left a local disco club, and someone gave me some Special K. Sir, could you tell me what that is?
Okay. Special K is a street name for ketamine. Ketamine is a tranquilizer used by veterinarians in large animal practice, particularly horses and cattle. Kids talk about dropping into the K-hole when they take ketamine or Special K. It's kind of a drop-out, turn-off drug. I am not aware particularly of any really bad results from it, but there have been some. Now, I would say that anytime anyone wants to know about a drug, especially if all they know is, say, a street name, the best place to look is a website called The Vaults of Erowid. That's EROWID. And it's erowid.org. And maybe Steve can get that up on the screen for us in a little bit. But they are very scrupulous about their scientific and medical information about the drugs, and they collect, without editorial comments, user reports, good, bad, and indifferent, and the scope of their coverage is really encyclopedic. So really, it's frankly the first place I look when I run into a drug I haven't heard of before. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I was just listening earlier about, you're talking about the Special K hole or something like that?
Yeah.
The Special K drug?
Yes.
And I know the Rule and Ryan show, we're talking about Special K and how it's a big problem in Houston.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe that you should be talking about Special K and his hole and Rule and Ryan and all this stuff. I just think it's wrong for you to be promoting this stuff on your TV show.
Well, I don't feel like I'm promoting anything, but I do think
you don't feel like you're promoting drugs?
No, I think that there's an obligation to talk honestly in an unbiased and neutral fashion and find out what the facts are.
I mean, you're promoting some sexy guy, the guy that I hit earlier with the Cabo story. I mean, he sounded like a sexy man, and you're talking about Cancun and Cabo, and then you talk to this next guy about his Special K hole. What kind of show is this? I mean, it is almost it's almost as gross as Ryan Chase's chest hair. I mean, why would you do something like this?
Okay, thank you. I'll explain. I don't believe he looked at our title even, that we talk about drugs, crime, and politics. We try to talk about it in a reasonably fact-based manner. We try to present the evidence and the information on it, and frankly, I will tell you that my own view is that whether or not any particular drug is helpful, harmful, or neutral, prohibition laws are by their very nature ineffective and destructive of society. But when it comes to questions about what a drug is or what it does, I try to be as neutral as possible. Now, we didn't get to finish the discussion of Mexico. The problem is that the violence in Mexico doesn't come from drugs. It comes from money. Drug trafficking is one of the 4 big sources of foreign capital in the Mexican economy. It's right up there with petroleum exports, tourism, and money sent from Mexican nationals abroad to their home. The other 3 are shrinking, the drugs are growing. Now, that's about probably 30 billion, with a B, American dollars a year dumped into Mexico to the drug traffickers. That's enough to make it worth fighting for. The problem is that money is all caused not by the drugs but by the drug laws. That 30 billion a year is probably realistically not more than 30 to 50 million dollars if those same drugs were legal. For instance, heroin that's now sold on the street for around $100,000 a kilogram was sold when it was legal by the bear company that made both of them at exactly the same price as aspirin. You can buy aspirin at your local Walgreens for $30 a kilogram. That's for a bottle of, that's in bottles of 100 milligram tablets. $30 a kilogram for legal aspirin. Legal heroin was the same price. Illegal heroin is $100,000 a kilogram. That's a 3,000 times expense. Marijuana based on comparable products. I mean, it's a plant that grows in the garden. You harvest it by snipping the top off of it and cleaning the extra leaves off. It shouldn't cost any more than broccoli does. They're grown in about the same way and even look similar. Now, marijuana should be $1 an ounce. It sells for good quality stuff on the streets now for anywhere from $200 to $400 an ounce or even higher. That's a 200 times multiplier. If we got rid of our prohibition laws that don't work and kept that money from going to the Mexican drug gangs, they wouldn't have any money to fight over, and they certainly wouldn't have money to buy military-grade weapons to fight with. We have to take another break now. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
The jury right to say not guilty is an essential safeguard against injustice, which dates back to English common law and the founding of the United States. Jurors in early 19th century America routinely refused to enforce the Alien and Sedition Act, and they rejected the Fugitive Slave Act. Jurors in early 20th century America refused to enforce alcohol prohibition. The injustices of the war on drugs have become obvious to many Americans. In cases where the law, prosecutorial excesses, and the likely sentence seem manifestly unfair, jury nullification ensures the citizen juror a more equal status with those who write the laws. Please visit the Fully Informed Jury Association, FIJA.org. Please keep such decisions private. Nullification is your right, your responsibility, perfectly legal and just.
We're back again, and tonight we've been primarily fielding phone calls, talking a little bit about some of the news. As I started to say, it's beginning to look like, in effect, in California at least, if we can believe what we're reading in the national media, articles particularly in one of the leading business magazines, I think it was maybe Business Week, a cover story in Fortune, a column in the latest Time magazine, and a cover story in Mary Claire about stiletto stoners. But all of these others indicate that it seems to them that, in effect, medical marijuana in California has provided, I guess we could call it a fig leaf legalization. But one interesting thing about it, one of these stories at least suggests that since the pressure has come off and they're not operating illegally, the state medical marijuana growers have been able to lower their prices. The prices have started coming down significantly. One report is that some of the street dealers in Los Angeles have not only cut their prices by about 20% to meet them, but are now also doing home deliveries. To me, the interesting thing about this is that criminal gangs can't cut their prices enough to stay competitive. It's much more expensive to run an illegal operation where you're having to pay people to run the risk of being shot or go to jail for 20 years, where you're having to bribe law enforcement officers and border guards to look the other way while you do your business, or in many cases even provide protection for you. You have to make more money for your own risk incentive to run the risk of going to prison for 20 years. So there's simply no way that someone running an illegal business can compete with someone operating legally and only bearing reasonable, normal business costs to carry out their operation. It's just like when Prohibition ended, Al Capone was not able to compete with Anheuser-Busch. If marijuana prohibition ended, whether we do it through the front door or do it through the back door like California seems to be, there is no way that the Zetas in Mexico can compete on a toe-to-toe basis with Walgreens. It just can't be done. Now, if you look at any of the chain pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, even those run through the supermarkets, almost all of them now will file any generic prescription for $4 a month. Now, under the way the patent laws work If they were legal, heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, even marijuana, if it were done properly, would all be generic prescriptions, except for marijuana, which doesn't need processing. The others all use very old, very stable, very well-known chemical processes, which are easy, cheap, and efficient to carry out. There's no way that, there's nothing that would prevent, say, a Walgreens from selling a month's worth of heroin for $4. And there's no way that the Taliban can compete with that. All our prohibition laws do is raise the prices to the point that it brings the bad guys into the market and threatens prison and violence enough to keep the good guys out of it. It doesn't keep the drugs from the street corners. It doesn't protect the kids. It puts all of our border guards and employees at risk. And if we look at what's happening in Central Asia, the whole war that we are fighting in Afghanistan, the other side, the Taliban, is funded by the fact that their people right now produce about 90% of the illegal heroin in the world. If we're serious about defeating the Taliban, the way to do it is to legalize heroin and cut their funding off, and has been shown repeatedly by the British, by the Swiss, by the Dutch. Heroin, morphine addictions can be easily and safely maintained through regular controlled maintenance distribution systems. It does not spread the number of users. It does not increase the number of addicts. And in the now nearly 15 years since Switzerland instituted its maintenance program, there has not been a single overdose death in the country. So drugs cause some problems that we have to deal with. But any way we look at it, prohibition laws cause more problems and worse problems and do nothing to decrease or ameliorate the drug problems. Now, if we want to control the drugs, the way to do it is by controlling them, not pretending that we can chase them away. The Netherlands, which has been allowing the sale of small amounts of marijuana to adults in coffee shops for many years now. When they started, they had roughly the same number of marijuana users among teenagers that the United States have. The rate of use in the Netherlands now is about half what it is in the United States. Bringing the monster out from the closet and putting it in the light of day means that it's not nearly as scary as it is when it's threshing around in the closet or under the bed. Now, next program, we will have my friend back with us, and he will be bringing his report on the conference in Albuquerque. I'm looking forward myself into finding out what happens this year. I suspect there's going to be quite a bit of excitement generated. We will have some reports not only from Clayton, but probably also by Dean Becker. And remember, he also has his radio programs on Sunday night on KPFT on the radio. So in the meantime, I think the thing that I keep stressing, that I stress every program, is that this government belongs to you. Those politicians are elected by you and they can be fired by you. It's their job to carry out your wishes, but the only way that they know what those wishes are for you to tell them. So please, call us or email me and I'll respond to you, but it's much, much more important that you let your elected representatives know how you feel on these issues. And by that, I mean not only the representatives and senators in the state legislature in Austin, but also the members of the House and the Senate in Washington. I mean the president. I mean the county commissioners and the county judge. I mean the city council members and the mayor. And in Houston, at least, there will be a new mayor in another month. It's a runoff election, so we don't know who it will be yet. We do have in Houston, and I think in many other cities as well, an open mic policy at the weekly city council meeting. You can sign up to speak for 3 minutes any Tuesday afternoon by calling at least 30 minutes before the meeting starts to put your name on the list. And then you have 3 minutes to tell the city council whatever you want to tell them. So it's up to you to make your voice heard, and it's up to you to make it sound strong enough that your elected representatives will listen to you. And I hope that here with our time on the air, I can help provide you some of the information you need. I think that things are looking like they're moving forward now. And I would also urge you, as I did a couple of people that called tonight, that if you are thinking about doing drugs, get the facts first. And once again, Erowid, EROWID.org is the best place I have found to get good, hard, factual information, including user experiences on nearly any drug. So thank you for being with me tonight. I hope you'll tune in and see us again in 2 weeks for our next show. In the meantime, you can catch us on YouTube. There are links on the dpft.org page. So thank you for giving me some things to talk about tonight. I hope I answered most of your questions, and I hope that we will see you all again 2 weeks, and we'll have some news from Albuquerque by that time. Thank you.
We have these private prisons that have now hired lobbyists to go get minimum mandatories and
I began to understand that the 17 or the 19-year-old kid I had in the backseat of my police car was not a criminal at all.
Remove the profit motive. If you remove the profit motive, you can do away with almost all these problems. And how do you do that? Simple. You end prohibition, which can only mean one thing. Legalize drugs. Legalize all drugs.
If we really want to improve our urban neighborhoods, the most important thing that we could do, the single most important thing that we could do, is end the war on drugs.